Hello everyone, this is my IST 618 oral presentation, and I will be talking to you today about 3D printers and information policy. So I don't have a web camera, so I'll be using just a PowerPoint that I'll be narrating, but just a little bit about me. My name's Bo Bradley. I am a second year library science student here at Syracuse University. My interests in library science are mainly reference and instruction, so I've done a lot with that from classwork to internships to jobs. And my background is I have a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature and Religious Studies. I'm from Ohio, where I grew up and went to undergraduate. And here's just a couple pictures of me so that you can put a face to the presentation that you will be seeing today. So if you don't know anything about 3D printers, I've included just a short video that should play while I can talk. You can just see it in action. And 3D printing is a technology that's really coming to the fore. And what a 3D printer does is it allows you to take a 3D design file, and using a 3D printer, you can take that 3D design and then print it out in plastic, which you can see happening here to the right. So layer by layer, it extrudes the plastic into the desired shape you want. And 3D printers are becoming very accurate, so you can get some really amazing results from a well-tuned 3D printer. But the big question for 3D printing and information policy, and the reason it's such an interesting problem, is that for the first time ever, 3D printers allow us to bridge the gap between digital files and physical objects. So if you think about the debates that have gone on in the past about piracy and intellectual property, we were always talking about digital objects, things not something we could touch, but something that we could just really easily transfer through computers. And obviously, those were not physical objects, those were not things. But now, because of 3D printers, we can take these physical objects, digitize them in the form of a 3D design, and then send them along to somebody else through the internet, which opens up a number of interesting information policy issues. And the other piece of this that makes this such a big question for information policy is that 3D printers are not being presented to us as industrial tools. We've had similar technologies in industry for some time now, but where the way 3D printers are being presented to us now are as consumer products. The prices have come down. Many are below $500. Some are even lower than that, hitting the $200 range. And I believe there's even a very simple 3D printer that is even cheaper than $200. So this technology is coming to us in the form of something that we should all have in our homes, not at our jobs that we all share, but something you can have in your house and you can use every day to make your life different. So, if 3D printer manufacturers had their way, we're all going to have one within the very near future. So this presents a really big information policy question for us. So the current laws, there aren't really any current laws that specifically address 3D printing. And as I've narrowed my topic down, the two sets of laws that I really want to look at are copyright laws and patent laws. And I'm going to talk a little bit about them later on in my presentation. But neither of them have any wording specifically addressing 3D printing, which is a really interesting um, situation because, as you'll see later, this may be a necessity or it may not be. But in any way you look at it, legal clarification is surely forthcoming on this issue. It's really coming to a fore. It's entering into the discussion more and more, and it's only really now a matter of time before some sort of legal clarification, be that a judicial ruling or legislation, is going to start affecting how 3D printers are sold, used, and distributed, as well as the network that supports them. So all the design sharing. So it's something that is going to happen, but just the question now is when and what form is it going to take. So my topic, what I want to look at specifically, is should Congress amend Title 17, which is the copyright law, or Title 35, which covers patent law, of the U.S. Code to explicitly address 3D printing? So this is the question I'll be researching and looking into. and looking at copyright law as well as patent law. So the stakeholders that I've identified here, I'll go through each one and talk about their stakes. So the first that came to my mind were the designers. So this can go a number of ways, but the main thing I want to look at were the people who are creating 3D designs. And this could take the form of a hobbyist who just creates these things on their own time for fun, doesn't really look to make a profit out of it. They just design these and they share them. And maybe they like to get their name known as a designer or as an artist, but mainly it's just something that they do for their own enjoyment and entertainment. All the way up to people who are professional 3D designers who work in industry, or perhaps they're an artist who exclusively works with 3D designs, who their intellectual property, their 3D files, could be really affected by how 3D printers are regulated or how we work with them, because they're creating the things that will be shared and printed on 3D printers. So they're a big stakeholder. And like I said, they could be a hobbyist with not a lot of monetary investment, but for some people, this is their livelihood. So they have a lot at stake there. The next set of people that I identified were the 3D printer manufacturers. A number of companies have been created to produce and sell 3D printers. And any sort of legal action could really affect their business. It could create customers. It could shrink their customer base. Anything like that is going to affect how these 3D printers or manufacturers are doing business. So they are a major stakeholder. They have a lot of money at stake for how we regulate and deal with 3D printers legally. The next group are the hosts of 3D designs. I've included a picture here of the biggest online host of 3D printer designs, Thingiverse, which is a subset of the MakerBot company who also makes 3D printers. So this group has kind of double dipped. But as we see this expand, you'll see more and more of these people who are hosting 3D designs. So they also have a lot at stake because their business operates on running a successful website that's both legal as well as usable and popular within the 3D printing community. And finally, the last group of stakeholders are the 3D printer owners and consumers. So a lot of people have already bought 3D printers. There are a lot of early adopters of this technology. Um, Everything, like I've mentioned before, from the professional down to the hobbyist who just wants a 3D printer because they think it's an interesting or cool new technology. So they've spent a lot of money on these devices, and there are a lot of potential customers as well. I'm sure some of you have probably thought it would be really interesting to own a 3D printer, and because legal action could have an effect on that, you are a stakeholder in this now because you would like to spend money, or perhaps you already have spent money investing in this technology. So the current policy situation, I'm not going to go really in depth on copyright or patent law. Firstly, because I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the law inside and out. I just have a basic operational understanding. So copyright law is there to protect the rights of the creators of creative work to determine what is done with their creations. Literally, the right to make copies. Um, there's a course being offered on copyright law right now at the iSchool. Some of you may be in that with me. So there's a lot you can talk about with copyright law, a lot of ins and outs to it. But just as a sort of basic definition, it's more geared towards creative work and the rights that people who make the creative work have. Patent law is similar, but instead it's going to cover inventions, more technical creations, and that's similar, that grants the creator the right to determine how that their creation is reproduced. But what's really interesting is both of these sets of laws have within them wording that points out that these laws are meant to promote progress. And they do that by saying you should create things because your rights to create them will be protected, and we'll look out for you, and we'll make sure that if you have a really great idea, be it a brilliant artistic idea or a wonderful invention will protect your rights to remain in control of those. So these laws are meant to promote progress, which I think is going to be a really important part of how this whole discussion takes place. Um, because 3D printers could be potentially a revolutionary new product. So this promoting progress is a big part of the current policy situation. I think that's going to be important. So in my research so far, I've uncovered a couple of possible options. Um, and these are just sort of two general directions I've seen the discussion going. So the first one is more towards regulation. So any sort of legal regulation of the sale or functionality or limiting development of the technology of some way, just legal, roadblocks that say this is what it can do, this is what it cannot. This is how it will operate, this is how it will not. This is how the community will work, this is how it will not. So really putting hard, fast rules in place that say how this is going to work, or saying it can't go that way. We can't let it out of control in this direction or that direction. We have to really keep a firm hold on it. So that's one possible way that the legal situation surrounding the information policy situation surrounding the 3D printers could go. We're really going to set up a firm set of guidelines and rules to determine what this technology will look like across the board. So that's one option. The other is more of a lighter touch option. Um, and what this would look more like is just incorporating 3D printers into the existing laws without really changing them or without imposing a lot of regulation on 3D printers. So this could be something as easy as just adding the wording of 3D printers into the word of the law and saying that 3D printers are just a part of the existing law system, or just saying that we don't think that 3D printers really are that different, and that our current laws are absolutely sufficient to cover them, and that we don't need to change anything, that our law system is equipped to handle 3D printers, and they will be subject to the laws that are already in place and that people are familiar with, and that will be the end of the discussion. So those are the two options I've really identified. And I just wanted to share a quick quote from a legal white paper that I found on the topic that's really excellent if you want to educate yourself on 3D printers. And the author, Michael Weinberg, said, both the legislature and the courts can take steps to protect innovation. Legislatures can say no when incumbents try to push laws designed to criminalize a new technology. Courts can protect legally defensible but culturally novel ways of doing business. After all, it was the Supreme Court's refusal to hold the creator of the Betamax liable for copyright infringement that gave us VCRs, DVRs, MP3 players, and more. So this would be sort of an expression of that second option, that looser definition, not regulating against um, possible futures that could be a lot darker than might logically happen, but that because we can allow a looser structure and more freedom, they can lead to greater innovation. So he draws the line from a Betamax player, that sort of first home video system, all the way through DVRs and MP3 players and technology that's very popular and ubiquitous today. So that I thought was a really good expression of that second option, more so than just saying, it's loose and they won't touch it as much. So that's where I am currently with my issue brief, and those are the issues I would really like to be tackling. But I wanted to just close. I thought this was really interesting, this quote. A once shuttered warehouse is now a state-of-the-art lab where new workers are mastering the 3D printing that has the potential to revolutionize the way we make almost everything. And this is a quote from President Obama that he said in his 2013 State of the Union address. So once you have the president talking about something in the State of the Union, I think it's definitely become part of a larger conversation about information policy. So, um, these conversations are already taking place in Washington and elsewhere, and I definitely think this is going to be a big a big discussion we're going to have within our fields, our respective fields within the next few years. So I'm very excited to be researching this, and I look forward to hearing everyone else's talks and see what everyone else is working on. And I'm really excited to be able to dig into the topic of 3D printers. So thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed my presentation.